Well, welcome to the Aging Boomers. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, on our show, we discuss so many of the issues facing the boomers, their parents, and what, of course, is an aging population, which I fall right into that category. I want to remind everybody that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, a senior placement and elder care consulting organization that has a national network of professionally trained and experienced local advisors to assist families. They'll work with you in determining the right path for you or your loved one and determining the proper various long-term care options, whether it's in-home care, assisted living, memory care, nursing care, or if you just need an advocate, you can get advice from a Senior Care Authority advisor for you and your loved one. So for a complimentary 30-minute consultation with an advisor in your area, contact Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231, or you could go directly to the website at www.seniorcareauthority.com. So again, I want to thank everybody for all their support. We've actually exceeded this past week 50,000 listeners. So, for a little podcast, that's not too bad. We're pretty happy with that, and it's growing all the time. So thank you for that support. Thanks for sharing the information with your loved ones as well. As always, we have great guests on our show, and we aren't going to disappoint you today. So we have with us Kimberly McGhee. Kim is an elder law attorney who focuses her practice on advocating and protecting her clients' best interests. She possesses a broad range of experience in the areas of estate planning, elder law, long-term care planning, asset protection, retirement planning, banking, real estate, and legal ethics. She is a member of the state bars of California and Nevada and a board member of the Southern California National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. So, Kim, I want to thank you for joining us on the Aging Boomers. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so lot to discuss. I mean, we're going to try to get in as much as we can, but I know we're going to talk a little bit about estate planning. Okay, and some people that hear the term estate, might think this is just for the wealthy, and I think that's probably furthest from the truth. But why don't you tell our listeners really what an estate plan is, basically?
Well, an estate plan is the written form of your wishes, and I think people forget to understand that when they pass or when they lose capacity, their wishes aren't going to be fulfilled unless they've written them down somewhere. And it also comes in the world of what are you going to do when you can't speak for yourself? Who's going to speak for you? What choices are you going to want made? So a good estate plan, depending on your state, can mean mostly it's a trust that's a document that holds your assets for you and defines how you want your money spent on yourself. It can be a will, which is going to decide what happens when I pass. Where do things go? Who gets what? Importantly, and people I see forget about these two documents, are the powers of attorney. Your power of attorney for asset management and your power of attorney for health care. And those are so important because as I tell my clients and my friends, what happens when you turn 18? Nobody can make decisions for you. So how does somebody go to the bank and get access to pay your bills? Who can talk to the doctor or pick up your prescriptions from the pharmacy? If you haven't defined out those people and put it in writing, there's no options out there but going to the court.
And I think that probably one of the greatest, misconceptions, because as you know, I'm in the industry and talk to people all the time. A lot of people think their spouse is automatically a power of attorney, and that's really not the case, correct?
That is absolutely true. You have to give somebody the legal written authority. I'm sure everybody's heard of HIPAA. That is the hospitals and your doctors. It is their job to keep your information secret and secure from everyone else. So if you don't give them authority to talk, to anybody, then your doctors, your pharmacy, they can't. And just like your bank, if your name is on that bank account only, it doesn't matter if you're married, the bank won't give that person access.
Right. And so again, and again, I don't mean to be critical of your industry, okay? But my point is this: that the term estate plan, I think, is misleading. Again, when you hear estate, you think that's just for the wealthy, which you've explained that's not the case, okay? And then you hear power of attorney. That sounds like a complicated document, and in reality, it's not. Am I right there as well?
You are right. Every state's going to have some laws that govern, because I always say, when in doubt, blame a lawyer. Right? We always made everything more complicated. But a good estate planning attorney will break it down. I always say, they've got fancy words like trustor and grantor and settlor. Blame lawyers. They all mean the same thing. It just means the creator of a document. And then you've got the fancy word of trustee. It just means the manager. You are the manager of your own money. It's just putting it in writing. And these power of attorney names, they're named so many things. Again, blame lawyers. Attorney in fact, agent, proxy, power of attorney, all of those mean the same thing. It means the person you say can sign your name, or the person that you say can make decisions for you when you can't make those any longer.
And you said something very important earlier, and I don't want to just skip over it. You said when you turn 18, okay? And the reality is that I would have to imagine, though I have not read any statistics on this, that I'm sure 90-some-odd% of the people that are 18 and over probably don't have a power of attorney. So you got a lot of people out there. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about someone who doesn't have a power of attorney, and let's just say they were incapacitated, whether it be due to an accident or it could, they just never did it, and as they aged, they had cognitive issues, and now that brings up, I think, incapacity. We could talk about that, but what happens? I mean, a lot of families think, oh, well, our family is really together and we're a close family. I'm sure the courts will say we could handle it.
Yeah, I see this a lot. That's an average client that walks in my door is the people who didn't have the proper planning, more or less because they didn't know that they needed it. They just made the assumption that I've always talked to the doctor, so why wouldn't they let me talk now? I have seen the increase of doctors actually following the law, the HIPAA rules. And so what happens is if I haven't named somebody and I get in an accident, then my loved one will have to go to a judge and get authority. And every state has some form of this, and they're called guardianships or conservatorships. In California here, we have conservatorships if you're over 18 and guardianships if you're under 18, but every state has one form or another. And it basically is a court proceeding that allows somebody to step into your shoes. And they're very expensive, and they're very time-consuming. And not only are those the factors, but it now has a court oversees everything your loved one does. And we have situations where we think what's right for our loved one should happen, but the judge may disagree. So if we know that our loved one maybe is a pull-the-plug kind of person, that they don't want to be left on life support, a judge may have a different feeling and not let you do that. Or let's say I want to spend a little more money on their cost of care. A judge might say, you know what, that's too fancy. I'm not going to allow you. So you take the power and control of your own life, and you now have put it into a judge's hands. And that's something that I don't ever want to happen. I always make the joke, I'm a control freak. So I want to stay in control. I want to be the person that makes those decisions.
Right. And it doesn't have to be that complicated. That's why you would use a service like yours, an elder law attorney, to help put that together. And it's not, I'm sure it's something that might appear complicated to the average person, but I know you do these things all the time. So.
Correct. And that's what we're here to do, is to help. And we want to help, and we want to make it as simple as possible.
Mm-hmm. So what happens if, every area has their area of specialty, and elder law is no different? If somebody were looking for an attorney, let's say they got a friend of theirs, or a friend of a friend who's an attorney, may not specialize in elder law. What's your recommendation to people in those situations?
Well, I always recommend go to a large source, go to the right source. And for an elder law attorney, NALA, which is the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys, they have a extremely large group of attorneys to access. And so you can go and interview. I'm a huge advocate of interviewing your professionals. People that provide a service, our job is to make sure you want to work with us. Interview us. If somebody doesn't like being interviewed, that's probably not your right person. Go and find your match. Find somebody you trust and somebody who speaks your kind of language, because everybody's a little different, and your life, you get to have control of your life. And so it's so important that you find that right person that you trust to help you navigate what you want your future wishes to look like.
Yeah. So Kim, tell us kind of what the makeup is of an estate plan. What are some of the key ingredients to an estate plan?
So a good key ingredient is putting a trust together that holds your assets. I have a good chart that I like to draw, so it's hard to do here, but it walks through who the creators are, who the managers are, and who the beneficiaries are. And it talks through 3 stages of life: when you're alive and well, when you become incapacitated, and then when you pass. Those are the 3 different stages in life that we need to put in writing. What do we want it to look like? How do you want to be treated when you lose capacity? You could get hit by the bus, get a traumatic brain injury, and now you no longer can make decisions for yourself. So how would you want to be treated? What kind of lifestyle would you like to have? Do you want assets preserved for your loved ones? Do you want to leave a legacy, or is it more important to spend it all on you? I see it all, where everybody has different choices, and if you don't write them down, people may never know. The other, besides just having that in your assets, it's so important to have it written as your health care. I mean, there are 2 sides to the spectrum. One side, cut off my head and freeze it. I know they will find a cure for what ails me. To the other side of the spectrum, consider my quality, just not my quantity of life. And everybody's somewhere in between there. So I don't know what kind of person everyone is, and your loved one may not even know what kind of person you are. They don't know, do you want your plug pulled? They don't know, do you want extra experimental drugs and different types of surgeries to keep you alive? These are things that if you don't tell somebody, you may have things done to you that you may not want.
And you're also putting if you don't do this, you're putting so much pressure on your loved ones who are now confronted with this situation, maybe having to deal with a complete stranger now in making these decisions. So, I always tell people, don't just think about yourself, think about your family too. And this is going to make it much. It's not going to be easy for them, but this will make it easier. Let's put it that way.
It's true. It's completely true. We spend so much of our lives protecting our children, our spouses, all of our loved ones. And this is something where I get the phone call a lot. When you become one of our clients, we always make the joke, become one of our family. I get the call from the daughters. I get the call from the spouses. My loved one's in the hospital, this is happening, and the doctor's pressuring me to pull the plug, or the doctor's pressuring me to give the surgery. I don't know what to do. And we always are happy in the situation when we say, well, you know what, we've talked about that. We've talked about the situation of I have advanced dementia. I have it's a severe end-of-life stage, and I got pneumonia. Your loved one said they didn't want antibiotics. They'd like to go peacefully rather than continue in their disease. We have those conversations. And it's hard if you don't know what somebody wants, and the medical professional's telling you one thing, and you don't know what you're supposed to do. You may walk away having guilt because you didn't know what your loved one wants. And I always say, protect your loved ones. Don't put them through that. Tell them what you want so they can follow your wishes and it alleviates some of that guilt and unknowing for the rest of their lives.
All right. So this is a tough one. I know we were, talking about power of attorney, but quite often, and it's happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to you quite a bit. You have a family who have maybe a parent or other loved one, maybe they've been diagnosed with some form of dementia, like Alzheimer's, which unfortunately affects so many people. And if they didn't plan and they didn't plan on a power of attorney, and they waited until they realized, well, we need to do this, but let's just say Dad does have a diagnosis of early stage dementia. Okay, does that mean right away that the father cannot sign a document authorizing who his power of attorney is, or how is that determined? I know that's a touchy one, but I think it's important for our listeners to know.
It is very important. Actually, it's my favorite topic. I teach on capacity in California regularly. Mm-hmm. In California, I can say, and every state's going to have something like this, but there is a probate code that says you are presumed to have capacity, and a diagnosis alone does not take that away from you. And that is so important for people to understand. And I know I have a lot of clients and a lot of people that I teach this, they love to hear that, because a diagnosis is a very scary thing. But it doesn't mean that you've lost the rights to make your own decisions. Every state has more of like a sliding scale, because capacity is a very hard thing to truly grab and hold on to. But the ideas generally are, do you know your loved ones? So do you know the objects of your bounty? That's the statement they say. But do you know your loved ones? Do you know what you have? Do you know what you want to happen with them? I may no longer be able to manage my $1 million estate, let's say, but I do know who I want to. I know I have one, and I know who I want to. That's the level that you need to be at. You may not be able to balance the checkbook very well, and you may have forgotten a water bill here and there, but that doesn't take away your rights to decide who you want to pay that water bill. Mm-hmm. So it's important to not wait too long, but it's also important to not assume that it's too late.
So who can determine capacity?
Well, in California, I can say only a judge actually does that. Doctors like to say they do. The judges listen to the doctors. But since there's no hard, fast rule, what we do in our office is generally, if somebody can understand and communicate and understand the consequences of their decision-making, that's usually enough. If you're in a part of your disease where it's not as simple and clear-cut, then we usually have clients evaluated by a neurological psychiatrist or some sort of other neurologist to confirm that they understand consequences of their decisions. And when they confirm that, we go ahead and can act for them. If it's something that they can't, then we unfortunately do have to go to the court. But the court will also, there are ways to help people through the court. It's just, we call the nuclear option. It's just a much more complicated proceeding and a more expensive one.
So all these pieces we're talking about, capacity, even power of attorney, it's all part of this estate plan, correct?
That's what makes up an estate plan. I know. I always say that we have such unfortunate terms. You're right. Estate planning is a bad term, just like elder law is a bad term, I think, because it has nothing to do with your age. It has everything to do with disability planning. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to not get hung up on thinking, I don't need this, when reality is everyone needs it. It's what level and to how extreme do you need to take it. There are people out there with the $70 million. Their estate plan will look different than the person with $500,000. But it's still a plan that needs to get put in place. They both consist of powers of attorney, and they they hopefully should consist of some sort of planning for after passing as well.
Okay. So if you don't mind, I'd like to get a little more into power of attorney, only because I just think it's just so important. And so you mentioned before, which again, I don't want to just skip over, I think it's important. There's two different types. There's financial and health. So if you could talk about that. Can they be the same person? Should they be the same person? And then also maybe, I'm sure people have heard the term durable power of attorney, and how does that differ from power of attorney? So a bunch of questions in one there, but if you could cover that, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, no, powers of attorney can come in all shapes and sizes. They can start as simple as a limited. You'll see those a lot in real estate. Say, I give my a limited power of attorney for someone to sign a document to sell my house. Generally, in a good estate plan, we'll say, you need a durable power of attorney. That is a power of attorney for asset management, for finances, that lasts beyond your incapacity. There are a power of attorney that is only valid until I lose capacity. I always find that very interesting, and why you would do that, I haven't figured out a good reason. But you want one to last after your incapacity. You want to name a person who's going to be in control of your finances, a durable power of attorney for asset management, to be the person who is good with money, right? I like to make the joke, if you've had to lend your child money because they can't handle their own finances, is that the person you want to put in charge of your money? This is somebody who, if you lose capacity, you're trusting to use your money properly to care for you, hopefully preserving whatever legacy you'd like to leave, as well as ensuring that your money lasts your lifetime. So you want to always think about who that person is. It's not just the firstborn son. It's just not the caregiving daughter. There's not what you're supposed to do. I get that question a lot. Well, who am I supposed to pick? There is no right answer. It's the right answer for your situation. And that sometimes I do also hear, well, I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. I can always alleviate that really quickly. It's not a privilege to be someone's agent. It is a burden. And that's the other person. Who has the time? If you've got a loved one who has barely any time in their day to live their own life, is that the right person to ask to now take over your life for you if you can't do it? So that's an important part when you're talking about your finances. Are they good with their own money? Will they be good with your money? And then, but the power of attorney for health care, they don't have to be the same people. And a lot of times we see that they're not, because the person who is good for having to be your advocate at the hospital may not be the same person that's good with your money. A lot of people do just assume, well, the caregiving daughter or the one that's always been there is the right person. But we are living in a time where your health care, you need an advocate. Things are happening that I'm seeing through my clients in the medical world where you need more of an advocate than anything else. You need to make sure someone's fighting for you, fighting for the right care, truly understanding what's going on, and be willing to question your physician. Why do they need that surgery? Why do they need that drug? Is there another alternative? What kind of rehab might help them better? Are there other options? Somebody who just will really fight for you. So I like to say that healthcare power of attorney, you want an advocate. You want that fighter. You want the person who will fight to make sure you get the highest quality care. And then that's why it doesn't have to be the same as the person running your money.
Right. And there's just, when people are confronted with a situation where they're now facing some decisions relative to long-term care, usually they've never had to do it before. Whether it be an adult child or the person themselves, they could be in their 80s and just never had to deal with it before. There's so much to know. You can't expect to know it all yourself. So obviously you want an advocate, like you said, from a power of attorney standpoint, and you might need also a professional advocate, somebody who understands the business, understands the industry, and could provide advice. They may not be the power of attorney, but they could certainly provide the power of attorney with some advice. So I think that's
correct. Yeah, your agents are always a good agent is an agent that will ask for help. That's how
right.
I like to think about it. Somebody
Yeah.
who will know, I don't know this, but I know that I can go find somebody who can help me.
Yeah. So we've got a couple minutes left, 2-3 minutes here. So I wanted to just ask you, I mean, there's so much that goes into estate planning, but what are some things you'd like to bring up that maybe we haven't covered?
Well, sometimes when we're talking about our plans for, we've got a plan for incapacity. We've already talked about that. You want to have a plan of what that looks like. But we also have other things in our life that we forget about planning for. Like, do we have pets that we want to consider? I had a client who had 11 birds. Birds live for a very, very long time. We
Right.
had to actually put a plan in place just for the birds. It was one of the funny. We searched everywhere. We had to find another state that would find a good sanctuary that would find them, and we had to determine how much money we had to send with them.
It's important to that family member. That's
It truly is. There's other things like, are there family members who we don't want to just leave money outright to? That's something that people don't want to talk about, but we always have to talk about. You may have a loved one that if you leave them an inheritance, that inheritance might do them more harm than anything else. Maybe it's because they have special needs or are on public benefits, and we don't want to disqualify them. I can tell you the worst thing you can do for a child with special needs and who's receiving public benefits is leave them $10,000. I see grandparents do that all the time, and the parents come into me and say, well, now they've just lost their medical benefits, and their medical, I have to spend $20,000 that month. And that was a harmful event for them. Or we've just got kids that may not be the best with money. And if we don't protect that money for them, like a continuing trust, maybe we put a professional in charge of their money so that we make sure their rent always gets paid. We make sure they have that inheritance will last throughout their life, so it just doesn't get spent on a boat or something like that.
Right.
There are other things in your plan. I've seen a lot of issues arising with firearms. What happens if you pass away with firearms? It's a hot topic in today's society right now, but it's a real difficult thing to die with a firearm in your state in California, that's for sure. So there's all sorts of different things that you're going to want to talk to your planner about. What should we do? How do we handle it?
Right. Well, Kimberly, this has been extremely helpful, educational. I'd love you to share with our listeners if somebody wanted to reach out to you or know more about your firm. Why don't you share your contact information, website, etc., whatever you'd like.
Yes, well, thank you. So the law firm is the law office is the Black & McGhee. We are located in Escondido, California, which is North County, San Diego. Our phone number is 760-745-2900. And you can always feel free to call. We always have someone answering live. I'm one of those people that can't stand pushing buttons. So we'll always have a live person here to help you and help navigate. If our firm can't help you, we're more than happy to find a firm that can.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Very helpful, important information. So thanks for joining us on the Aging Boomers, Kimberly. I really appreciate it. And
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and I want to thank everybody out there for joining us as well. Look forward to talking to you all soon. Just be safe out there. And we'll talk to you all soon. Thanks very much.